He has a presentation, and then as always, we can ask questions afterwards. So with no further ado, Tobias, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Tillamook County Dems. I really appreciate being with you tonight. A few things just to start off. I mean, one, it really means a lot to me that after a year and a half of a lot of Zoom meetings, if you're like me, probably more than you thought you were signing up for, that you're willing to hang out with me for at least a little bit here. I like it when we can be in person better, but in the meantime, this is pretty good, and it does make it easier for me to get virtually around the state and see people that I might otherwise struggle with. So I appreciate that. The other, I was really struck by the way all of you had different answers to the question about politics as an intro. It was really helpful to me to get a sense of who you are as individuals and as a community. And while I can understand the frustration and sort of negative feelings that people can have about politics these days, I think that is also something from which we can take some increased resolve, because I think what motivates everybody here is to change those things and to change things for the better. At one point, I can't remember who said it, but it reminded me of this quote you've probably heard from Tom McCall, who said, "Heroes aren't mythic figures framed against the, I can't remember if he said red or orange sky. They're simply people who say that this is my community and it's my responsibility to make it better." So in a lot of sense, in a very real sense, all of you are heroes, and I'm glad that we're together here tonight. What I would like to do is offer a few thoughts that I hope will serve as kind of stimulus for conversation. I have a rough idea of what I'm going to say, and so it's not all that interesting to me. I'm a lot more interested in what you all are experiencing, what your life is like these days, and if you can give me a sense of how that feels and what we should be paying attention to. I think I'd start with just the kind of some of the work that we're doing at Treasury and how we're thinking about this unique economic time and how we're going to rebuild Oregon's economy. I think we've got to remember, amidst all of these challenges, that Oregon has a lot going for us. The challenges are real, but our strategy, our economic comeback, is going to be building on the things that make us special and that give us real advantages. So I've got the same answer every time someone asks me how we're going to rebuild this economy in a way that is more resilient, more just and equitable, and brings more people off the sidelines. Some of these things will sound like, I hope a lot of us as Democrats and what unites us. I think that our investments in education have to be at the center of this, particularly the early ages that set young people up for a lifetime of success and resilience and self-sufficiency. But we also can't overlook community colleges in particular that play such an important role in connecting people to the skills they need. And that is especially relevant at a time like this, when I think people are adapting, reskilling, retooling, and as the economy remakes itself, we've got to be looking at those community college investments as well. And I think, like most Democrats, we have to be focused on infrastructure. The president is right. This is a chance for us to build back better. It's very encouraging to see what's coming out of Congress and Oregon being well positioned with Congressman DeFazio as chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Our experience with wildfires last year and this year is also revealing the vulnerabilities of a lot of our infrastructure. And I imagine I don't have to convince anybody on a call like this that broadband is actually part of infrastructure. If it was ever a luxury, it's certainly not now. It's plays such an essential role in education, public safety, and economic development, healthcare, and the list really goes on. So we've got to make sure that that's an essential part of our strategy as well. But I don't want us to make the mistake of thinking that we just talk about these things without also building the support for how they are funded, and resisting the temptation that I think we all feel to sort of go to our corners. It's not enough to do that. We have to do the hard work, particularly as Democrats, to talk to people with whom we might not agree, and to do this work of bringing the whole state together and bringing us forward as a whole state. That's how we can build the kind of progress and momentum that can stick, that can last. That's not something that's going to happen automatically. It's certainly not going to happen if people in the urban centers of Oregon think of government as something that has to be distrusted or opposed or unfunded. And it's not going to happen if we don't have private sector investment and public sector cooperation. And it is absolutely not going to happen if we continue, as we have done for far too long, to far too great a degree, to leave people on the sidelines. But Democrats, this is my core message. I think it can happen, and in fact, it will happen if we can bring people together around an opportunity agenda where we talk about the fact that we believe strongly that it shouldn't matter where you happen to grow up. Everybody ought to have access to opportunity, whether you're in Northeast Portland or on the coast with all of you, or on the Umatilla Reservation, another part of Oregon. We've got to be about making sure that everybody has the chance to do what they want. And that really is what animates my work at Treasury, trying to reorient our work and our policies around that opportunity agenda. We've successfully rolled out Oregon Saves. Appreciate, Madam Chair, you mentioning this, but I have to brag on it for a moment. This is the first program of its kind in the country. We're really trying to address the retirement crisis, and other states are following us now. We passed a couple of significant milestones in the last few months. As we near our 4th anniversary, there are now about 110,000 people who have funded retirement accounts, and they have collectively saved over $120 million. And I'm telling you, there's not much more gratifying than looking into the eyes of someone who is, for the first time, feeling like they are on the path to financial autonomy. Their faces light up and they are really optimistic. And I think that's something we should all be excited about. The other piece that I want to make sure you know about is our work to make college savings more accessible and relevant for people. For a long time, I think, and for a lot of people, what happens for education after high school just felt kind of out of reach and inaccessible. So we've been working hard to make that more relevant and accessible. And for the first time, the tax incentive associated with a college savings plan, which we call the education savings credit, is both refundable and progressive. And I know this sounds a little nerdy, but this matters because it means that people at every income level can use it. So it's like the political tax credit. And if you imagine a family who's on the lower end of the economic spectrum, making less than $30,000 a year, if they could put $300 away over the course of the year, they will get that money back in the form of a larger tax refund or a smaller tax bill. They can then even take that $300 and recycle it back into the account. Over those years, that can add up to a significant amount towards education after high school, which, by the way, works for college, community college, trade schools, apprenticeship programs. And here's the reason this really matters. Any kid who has an account is 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to graduate from college, no matter how much money is in the account. This is why we make $25 deposits in any account that's open for an Oregon-born baby before their first birthday. This is called Baby Grad, and we've had such success with it that we've extended it to Kindergrad. So same offer for kindergarten students. And I just feel really strongly about this as the state's chief investment officer, that we want to deliver this message to every kid in Oregon, that we want to say to them, you are capable, you are worthy, and we believe in you. So these are, I could go on about these things for a while. It's a job I love. It's a set of things that I think really make a difference for what kind of a state we're going to be in the long run. But I don't want to run the risk of going on about things you're not interested in. So I'm going to stop there and say thanks again for letting me be with you, and really invite your questions and comments. I don't want this to be a monologue. You've tolerated that long enough. So, Madam Chair, what do you have for me?
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. I'm sure we have a lot, and I'm trying to get to a place where I can see everyone here, and we will now take questions from the floor. And Cole and Logan, if you will help me see when people's hands are raised. Diane Colcart sent a message for you in the chat.
Yeah, I loved SMART, and I don't get to do it as much anymore, but I will never forget Zeus, this first grader that I read with. I thought for a long time he did not like this. Like he was just unhappy with the idea of reading. And then for some reason I couldn't come one week, and I'd arranged for a substitute or whatever, and I came back the next week and he was gone, but he left me a note with this, what happened to you? I thought you were dead or maybe killed or fell in a volcano, with a really vivid illustration of a volcano. And the story gets even better because several years later, I can't remember if this was in the context of being a legislator or maybe as treasurer, I was touring the middle school with the principal, and she was walking me through, and we went kind of through the band room. And as we were going out, I heard the teacher say, "Now Zeus, blah, blah," and I stopped and turned around and did the mental calculation, like that's probably the right number of years. And did that guy go to Greenway Elementary? Is that, and it was the same kid. And I didn't get to talk to him then, but to kind of see him several years later, and I heard some more of the story about some of his challenges and the ways he was overcoming things. And I don't know if I've ever gotten to tell that story at SMART, but it feels like a pretty good testimonial about what SMART does. So thanks for highlighting that, Diane.
I don't know if I have to raise my own hand to speak. But...
No, you don't, Madam Chair.
I want to start with a question because you mentioned the college savings program.
Yes.
And Betsy McMahon is on the board of the local community college. And I retired 2 years ago as a teacher, and I taught in high school. And I, among other things I taught in a college prep program with
Great.
high poverty students, first generation high poverty students. So my question is, and let me just say, I realize that it's an economic issue in Oregon to have a well-educated, well-trained workforce, and all college levels do that. Community college in particular gets in there and does that. But my question is, how is your office working with schools to get this information out to parents so they can start early on this?
Yeah, we take every sort of guerrilla approach we can get. In fact, just as an example, we have a data sharing arrangement with the health authority. So we get a list of new parents every quarter and send them a letter and say, congratulations on the addition to your family. Here's information about the college savings plan. And now we can talk about the education savings credit. We've also made it possible for people to, with a few clicks, to both open a college savings plan when they are filing their state taxes, and to directly deposit any refund to which they might be entitled into a college savings plan. We show up at any kind of a community event that will have us. We have some partnerships with Head Start programs, with some of the Healthy Start programs as well, some hospitals and hospital systems. We also, and I think this is a really important point. By the way, I did deputize all of you to spread the word about baby grad and kindergrad, right? This is your assignment to the extent I get to do that. It's really important for people to know about this everywhere. Part of what motivated me to be so concerned about this is the reality that the population who uses the college savings plan does not yet look like Oregon. It is disproportionately affluent white people from metro areas, and I'm not satisfied with that. I want every kid in every geographic and demographic corner of the state to know that this is an option for them. And that they should, there's nothing wrong with any of the paths that are available after high school. There's lots of ways to reach the life you want, but we know that just about every good outcome requires some kind of education or training, and we want people to be thinking about that. That's what really happens with these accounts. It causes people to think, and the young people, the beneficiaries in particular, if they know that an account exists, they know that someone believes in them, that someone has expectations of them, and it really changes the way they think about their future. And that, fellow Democrats, is a good investment.
The next question, because I have a lot. Oh, Betsy has one. Thank you, Betsy.
I don't have a question, but I want to say thank you for your support of community colleges. I am thrilled to know, I just heard from Ross Tomlin, the president of Tillamook Bay Community College. I just read his recent letter that we did get the request that we had for our ask, what we asked for, and that's thrilling. And
was that
I'm
bond?
definitely.
Was it a bond issuance, or what, do you know what the ask was?
Well, it's just for the yearly budget.
Okay.
I mean, we got what, I mean, it was voted in, of course, but I'm assuming the state treasurer had something to do with that. So I'm
Well,
just saying. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We definitely advocate for these kinds of investments that make a difference over the long run of the economy. And there are essentially three things that make the difference over the long run for a state or a community. It's investments in education, innovation, and infrastructure. There are other things that matter, but that's the stuff that makes a difference.
Thank you. Andrea?
Good.
So did Oregon receive extra money from the feds during COVID? And has it helped a lot of 501c3s? Has it helped a lot of education programs? Where is that money going and what's going on?
There's a I'm debating how critical I can be here. Do you maybe when you were a kid or you had kids, you remember this image of maybe holding or watching someone hold the garden hose and it goes on, has a nozzle on it, and somehow it gets out of someone's hand and but the water's still on, it's kind of flopping around. And I feel like that's sort of what's gone on in the legislature to some extent. There was a lot more money than we were expecting. And thank goodness for the Biden-Harris administration that took COVID seriously, that took the economic impacts of the pandemic seriously, and took their obligations to help states and localities seriously. If that were not the case, we would be in a really, really difficult spot. The reason I bring up the hose sort of image is I'm a little bit concerned about whether we exercise sufficient discipline in prioritizing where those dollars spent. I don't have anything particularly, with one notable exception, and I will come back to this, any huge complaints about where they went, but I'm not sure that in spreading it so widely, we didn't have the effect of giving everybody some more and not very many what they need to actually accomplish the goals. I also worry about what that means for future budget cycles, about what expectations are and what obligations we may have set ourselves up for. The one really serious specific complaint comes from a mechanism that I think was well-intended, but maybe not had the effect that it wanted. And that was that every legislator got their own allocation that they got to spread around their district as they wanted. It was $2 million for state representatives and $4 million for state senators. Well, there's one state senator in Southern Oregon, a former chair of the Oregon Republican Party named Art Robinson, that many of you may know, who devoted his entire $4 million allocation to a crisis pregnancy center. And I think all of us here probably would share the concern that is often expressed about those facilities and the accuracy of the medical information that they share. So there's potentially a legal question, but I am not of the opinion that was a good investment. So I do have that specific complaint. Beyond that, it went to lots of good things, sort of in proportion with the rest of the budget, and we are in a much better position as a state for those kinds of investments. So again, great thanks to the federal government.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mark?
Hello. I'm just curious with the funding and the infrastructure bill. Down here in Tillamook County, there's a lot of people who are in, natural resource industries, and something has to be done to make them sustainable, but also, for lack of a better term, green jobs. And what kind of efforts are being made to bring that sort of training and education to a community like ours? Although I know there'd be a lot of resistance to change, direction for a lot of people. They want to stay in the natural resources harvesting business. So
it's a good question. I think one of the One of the downsides of what, or one of the upsides of what we're seeing right now that's otherwise not a good thing around fires is an increasing recognition of what needs to happen to reduce those risks going forward. And the science is pretty clear that cleanup of forests, that prescribed burns and other similar strategies are going to be a really big part of that. So I think policies and investments in that direction hold some promise, both for what it can do in terms of avoided cost and the jobs that it can create. We're also engaged in a really interesting conversation as the state land board around how to resolve decades-long tension between the obligations for the Elliott State Forest as it now exists and the opportunity to transform it into a research forest at Oregon State University that will help help to explore how we can better manage those competing concerns and create new opportunities and new jobs around natural resources. I don't mean to suggest that forestry is the only example of natural resource jobs, but it's obviously a significant one for Oregon.
I just will mention that Tobias Reed has an engagement coming up with the Washington County DIMS also, and so we have about 5 minutes left for questions. And Cole posted something in the chat, so I'm realizing I may need to, if I keep reading the chat, I may need to get my other glasses here in a minute. But for the moment, Cole, do you just want to ask it?
Yeah, let me just, I only posted that visible to you, Mary, in case you ran out of questions. So I don't think there's much danger of that. But let me see if I can just read it real quick. I just want to know what what you would prefer our priorities to be as state treasurer. I mean, should our priorities be educating our constituents, advocacy for particular programs, just get more Democrats elected? Are there situations where our advocacy risks politicizing something that might otherwise sail through?
That's a really
anything
interesting
like that.
question. Yeah, Cole, I think you're asking a good philosophical kind of question here. For me, I'm a Democrat because of the my strong belief that we are stronger together and can do more together than we can individually. I'm not a Democrat for really any other reason. That plays out in lots of ways, but I think the reason I say that is I think that's what motivates my answer, which is we've got to be about what we're trying to accomplish as Democrats, not the fact that we're Democrats. That's this being Democrats for me is means to an end, and the end is to really unlock the potential that exists in individuals and in communities. And I think over the long run, well, frankly, my objection to most of what I think is wrong with our politics and policy is the fact that the short term tends to crowd out the long run. And for me, the long run is all about education. It's all about innovation, and it's all about infrastructure. That plays out in lots of different ways. But I mean, to pick up on the example we were just talking about, we got to be serious about the threat of climate change. It's not even a threat anymore. It's real. It's here. It's now. It's disrupting things. You can't avoid it. But our investments in the human potential that exists in every Oregonian, who knows which person is going to have the idea, or which team of people more likely is going to have the idea that's going to create solutions. It's going to create a business or a product that meets a need and allows an economy to flourish. These long run investments, I think, are what hold the greatest potential for us. And that sometimes that means saying no to things that we would like to do, but there's a difference between investment and maintenance. It's not that we shouldn't have maintenance, but I think we cannot let maintenance crowd out investment. And that's probably at least as philosophical an answer as your question. Hopefully we'll be able to follow up on that offline or in person and get more specific.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I saw Eve's raising her hand too, if you didn't, Madam Chair.
Yeah, so I have a two-part question, and it might seem a little elementary, but hopefully not. So could you give me a brief overview, sort of a layman's overview of what you personally and your office handles as far as decision-making? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And the reason, and part of that is, if you could include, what kind of talking points can you give us for progressive voters? Because I ran into opposition in getting support for you from progressive voters who criticized that you weren't progressive enough. And so strategically speaking, what I'm working toward is more unity within the party.
Sure.
Because I feel like we're often working against each other within the party. So if I have a little education on exactly what you do and how you do it, and some of the decisions you've made that I can pass along, that would be very helpful.
Sure. That's an excellent question.
And Treasurer Reed, may I just interject that this will be your last question? So answer it however you want here, as
Yeah,
long
I'll
as
do it all in 2 minutes. Let's see. So I think, Eves, it's a great question. It's not elementary at all. It's a smart one, and it's probably a great place to have started, frankly. The treasurer's office is one that is often overlooked, but it has a pretty important role. There's only 3 constitutional statewide officers: a governor, secretary of state, and treasurer. And they're pieces that are fairly obvious. However, sometimes people have the misimpression that we decide the budget, or we're tax collectors, neither of which are true. What we really are is custodian of public funds before they are used for their intended purpose. So when tax dollars are collected, they are brought together, they're consolidated, and we invest those dollars, and then we send them out. We're the bank for the state. We're also the investment shop. So the state portfolio is about $120 billion. So we're responsible for managing those dollars and investing them. The vast majority of those dollars, about 80 billion of that 120 billion, is the pension fund. And that's used to pay the pensions that public employees have earned, and to earn dollars for future benefits. That matters for the state's economy, because it's $3 to $4 billion that goes out into the economy for people to buy groceries and pay their electric bill and all the rest. It also matters, our success in generating investment returns matters, because when we generate $1 of investment returns, it's $1 that doesn't have to come from elsewhere in the budget or ultimately from taxes. We are also the issuer of bonds for the state that are used to finance infrastructure. So that means we're looking out for our credit rating as a state. We're looking for opportunities to refinance that debt when market conditions allow. Our team there is also world class, as are the investment professionals. So they can save those dollars and the debt costs, and make those dollars go farther to build schools and roads and bridges and all kinds of things. In addition to that, I think the other major category is the financial empowerment programs that we offer. I talked about college savings and Oregon Saves. There's another third one that's pretty significant called ABLE, which is aimed at people who are living with disabilities. And it really is transformational, because it allows them to save without jeopardizing their eligibility for benefit programs, many of which have an asset test limit associated with them. So we are really aggressive and progressive on all these fronts. And I think I'm going to guess at least one element of the opposition or the frustration you might have encountered relates to how we use our position as an institutional investor. And there are folks who want us to be a lot more aggressive. But it's complicated, one, based on the size of our portfolio. The other is that I can't, as the chief investment officer, apply my own politics to other people's money, because that's what we're investing here. We're investing the retirement funds that belong to other people. But that also offers us a chance to be active and effective in a different way. And there's a really timely and I think good example of this recently. Did anybody follow the election for board of directors at ExxonMobil recently? So ExxonMobil, not a member of the Hall of Fame of responsible companies, but they had a really interesting contested election in which 3 directors that I think that you could point to as dissidents, because they believe in climate change and they think that Exxon needs to take that seriously, were elected to the board. And part of the reason that they were elected to the board is that we voted for them. And we could do that because we were owners of that stock. It's not because we've selected ExxonMobil. It's because in trying to minimize and manage our costs and therefore get better returns, we engage in a lot of index investing, a lot of passive strategies. So we get exposure to some companies that we would probably not pick based on some of these other activities. But the upside is then we can vote on them. We can hold them accountable. We can change the direction of those companies. And I would put us up. Yes, thank you, Logan. We are getting nerdy here. But that gives us a chance to put our influence as an institutional investor to work. And Madam Chair, you were kind to say that's my last question, but I don't want to leave on a totally nerdy note. So if there's anything else we need to cover, if that has stimulated anything else that people want to bring up, that's fine. Eves, I hope that's at least somewhat helpful.
It doesn't necessarily have to be your last question. I just knew you had a time frame. And
I do, and I appreciate you helping me get click over a couple of counties to Washington County.
And I see that Logan had his hand up.
Thanks.
Okay. So I'll try to make this as non-nerdy as possible.
Hey, no, I'm okay. I think I tell our kids that being accused of being a nerd is kind of a compliment. So don't run away from it.
So I was following, we are a member of Healthcare for All Oregon, and I was following a couple of different things going through. One of them was the ballot measure that we passed the voters for drug treatment plans and drug treatment centers. And that started a dialogue about how, I don't know what degree the treasurer's office interfaces with the legislature. And I know that they have like their own research office, but so much what we see in the legislature, and you know this from your time there, is questions about what is economically feasible. Does the treasurer's office give any insights to that, or what do you think it should or shouldn't do?
Yeah, when we are asked, we absolutely do. And I make a real point to try and talk to every legislator, certainly at the beginning of every session, and remind them that we're there and that we can help and we can be an independent voice in that. The legislature, of course, has a legislative revenue office and the legislative fiscal office. The Office of Economic Analysis also exists, but we can provide alternative viewpoints on that. And then I try to remind myself that I'm not a legislator anymore, but to try to at strategic times when I think my voice can make a difference, look for those opportunities to make the financial case for good policy. I think it would be easy to dilute that if I did that too often, but to try to pick my spots. And I'm always open to having a conversation with you and others about where those spots might be. So good question, a good place to end. I appreciate all of you letting me be with you tonight, and I hope you will please keep in touch.
Thank you. Could we all unmute and give Tobias Reed a warm Tillamook County thank you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.